Hi, I'm Pamela. Up until I turned 10, my life was something out of a picture-perfect family ad. We lived in a cozy house in the suburbs. Dad drove me to school and bought me ice cream just because. And Mom would drop everything in the middle of the day just to sit with me in the kitchen and listen while I excitedly spilled the latest gossip. You're so special, smart, and beautiful.
You're the best daughter in the whole world.
And I believed them because they acted like it was the truth. But sometimes I noticed little things that didn't add up. Mom would stop in my doorway and just stare at me for a long time like I wasn't her daughter but an old photo. Once or twice, she even called me Emily. Mom, I'm Pamela.
Sorry, I'm just tired.
I laughed it off because grown-ups mix things up all the time. But for some reason, that name got stuck in my head. But when I turned 10, our house descended into total chaos. Mom got pregnant and everyone was thrilled. But nobody expected it to be triplets. Can you imagine? Overnight, I went from being an only child to having 3 baby brothers. After that, my parents didn't look happy and relaxed anymore. They looked scared, like they were constantly bracing for something to go wrong. Mom almost always had one of my brothers in her arms while the other 2 screamed in their cribs. She hardly ever looked at me, and when she did, it was like she was looking straight through me. Dad started coming home late, wolfing down his food, then vanishing again. This won't last forever. The babies will grow up, everything will go back to normal, and I'll be the favorite daughter again. But years went by and nothing changed. I had this constant feeling that I didn't belong, like I was something they'd meant to throw out but never did. My brothers got bigger, noisier, and somehow they were always the center of attention. I resented them because with them around, no one noticed me. And sometimes I caught myself thinking that they didn't even look like they were related to me. At some point, it felt so weird that I went digging for old photo albums. I wanted to compare us as babies to see if we actually looked alike. I searched the entire house, but all I found were photos of my brothers. There weren't any baby pictures of me at all. Mom, where are my photos?
We keep them separately, with the old stuff.
She changed the subject so fast. That was the last straw. And instead of staying quiet, I did everything I could think of to make her notice me. I quit being a good student. I'd skip lessons and just drift around the mall. Then I'd show up late and slam the door behind me. I often got called to the principal's office for being late.
What's with the attitude? I want your parents at school tomorrow.
Yeah, good luck with that. They don't have time for that. Miss Bateman quickly realized no one was keeping an eye on me.
Instead of complaining, you could try helping your family for a change.
For some reason, those words stuck with me. I started wondering, maybe if I became useful, more grown up, more responsible, my parents would finally notice me. I started helping out around the house, babysitting my brothers, doing the dishes, cleaning the rooms, but Mom still acted like I wasn't there. She moved through the house, muttering under her breath,
"Please, just let everything be okay."
Sometimes she'd slip up and called me Emily. That's when I decided to find out who Emily really was. But no matter how hard I searched, I couldn't find a single clue. One day at school, they announced a masquerade party. And for the first time in a long while, I actually wanted to take a break and just relax. Dad, can you give me some money? I need a costume for the school masquerade party.
I'm sorry, honey. We spent it all on your brother's clubs.
In that moment, I realized that no matter how hard I tried, in my family, I would always come second. The next day after classes, I left school and just sat down on the steps. I didn't want to go home. The thought of it didn't make me angry or sad, just tired, like home had stopped feeling safe. I stayed there until the school doors opened and Miss Bateman stepped out onto the porch. She stopped and asked sharply,
"Why aren't you going home?"
"There's nothing good waiting for me there. I did what you told me. I started helping my parents, but it didn't matter. They still don't notice me." At that moment, Miss Bateman suddenly sat down next to me on the steps.
"I'm sorry it turned out like this, Pamela."
It was weird because that was the last thing I expected from the principal. But to my surprise, I felt a little better because for once, someone was looking at me like I was a person, not a problem. We sat there for a couple of minutes. Then she said I still had to go home. I nodded, stood up and left, still carrying the small warmth in my chest. I was walking, just taking everything in. And then I spotted a flyer taped to a pole, the kind where people usually post ads for beat-up cars and guitar lessons. The flyer said a family needed a babysitter for a small kid. That got me thinking. I needed money, but even more than that, I needed somewhere I could go without feeling like I didn't belong. The next day after school, I went to the address, knocked on the door, and told them I could work as a babysitter. I was open and genuine. I guess that worked because they listened to me, asked a couple of questions, and said I could give it a try. From that day on, I started started coming to their place every day after school. I fed their little boy, played with him on the floor, and kept an eye on him so he wouldn't put everything he found into his mouth. His parents were genuinely good people. They invited me to dinner and asked me about my day. It felt strange at first, but it was really nice. A couple of weeks later, I got my first paycheck. I just stood there, staring at the bills in my hands. I couldn't believe I'd earned that money myself. I went ahead and got myself a costume for the school masquerade party without asking anyone for permission. The whole evening went by as if I'd escaped my real life for a few hours and wandered into a different one, where I was dancing, laughing, and not worrying about a single thing. After the masquerade, Miss Bateman came over, looked me up and down, and asked with genuine warmth, "So, Pamela, how are you doing?" I was in such a good mood that I told her everything, how I started babysitting, earning my own money, and how it honestly felt like a new life had just begun.
Look at you. That's wonderful. I'm really happy for you.
We just stood there and talked like we weren't a principal and a student, but just two friends catching up. Over time, I started babysitting for different families. Word spreads fast, and calls started coming in. I loved being able to buy my own things and not depend on my parents, but there was something I loved even more than that. In those houses, people actually spoke to me. They'd offer me tea and ask how I was doing at school. One of the women I worked for turned out to be a maternity ward staff member. One evening, while I was putting her child to sleep, we got chatting. I told her about my parents and brothers.
I remember those triplets. Where's your sister?
I froze, and I asked her to repeat herself. I honestly had no idea what she meant. The woman paused, and then she said she must have been mistaken. I nodded, but her words stuck in my head and kept looping like a broken record. When I got back home, my parents were waiting for me.
Pamela, where do you keep disappearing all the time?
Wow, I'm surprised you even noticed. I told them the truth. I'd been working part-time as a babysitter. They didn't like it.
That's not safe.
And then I remembered what that woman said. By the way, where's my sister? Mom turned pale as snow and rushed into the other room, and Dad just fell silent. That was the moment that I realized they were definitely hiding something. The next day, I was walking along a street after school when a car pulled up next to me. Miss Bateman leaned out the window.
Need a ride?
I said yes because I felt safe with her. On the way, she invited me to come over, and I shrugged, thinking, sure, why not? Miss Bateman's house turned out to be neat and strangely quiet. No clutter, no kids, toys, none of the constant commotion I was used to. It was obvious she lived alone.
I've never been married, Pamela, and I don't have any children, even though I've always dreamed of having them. But at my age, it's already too late to have a baby.
Then she looked at me in a way that made me feel uneasy.
I've always wanted to give all my love to a little girl who really needs it. I get it, Pamela. Would you like to be my daughter? I know things are hard for you at home. I could love you the way you deserve to be loved.
I completely froze because it sounded like a wish come true. On the one hand, I'd wanted for so long for someone to choose me and tell me I mattered. But on the other hand, I still had parents. Weird, tired, always busy, but they were my parents nonetheless. I need some time to think, Miss Bateman. It's not something I can decide so quickly.
Of course. I'll be waiting for your answer.
The next day, I was barely watching where I was going as I walked from school to my babysitting job. There was so much on my mind. The moment I walked in, I realized the woman I worked for had guests over, a wealthy couple. She introduced them as Mr. and Mrs. Winter. Suddenly, my employers told them what an amazing babysitter I was, like they were pitching me to them. Mr. Winter studied me, clearly sizing me up.
We actually do need a babysitter. In a couple of days, we're leaving on an ocean cruise, and it would be wonderful if someone could watch over our son.
And we'll make it worth your while. I really need a break. Lately, my life had been full of strange conversations and questions with no answers. I agreed almost immediately because I needed a place to escape to, somewhere I could finally think. At home, I packed my backpack, trying to do it quietly, but Mom noticed anyway.
And where exactly are you off to?
A wave of anger hit me. She suddenly decided to take an interest now? I'm just going through old things in the closet. Later, I waited until she got distracted by my brothers, grabbed my backpack, and walked out the door without looking back. The ship turned out to be massive and gleaming like something straight out of an ad. Mr. and Mrs. Winter strode ahead with total confidence, like they owned the place. Their son Marvin was a gloomy 7-year-old who stared at me like I was just another temporary babysitter. See? Marvin's so difficult and spoiled.
We have dinner scheduled with business partners, and Marvin must be on his best behavior.
I can handle it. The cruise started, and I dragged Marvin all over the decks, showed him the pools and the game rooms, but he mostly kept silent. At one point, I got distracted. When I looked back, He was playing at the very edge of the deck, sliding around on the wetboards like it was a game. I sprinted toward him. Marvin slipped and started to fall, but I managed to grab his hand and yank him back. At that exact moment, my phone slipped out of my pocket and vanished into the water. Marvin, what's wrong with you?
My adoptive parents don't love me.
He told me his real parents had died, and Mr. and Mrs. Winter adopted him.
They take care of me, but they don't love me. I wish I could have my real parents back for even 5 minutes, but that will never happen.
Those words hit me hard. My parents were still alive, and even if they didn't see me the way they used to, at least they were still around. Guilt ate at me, and I wanted to call home. Then I remembered my phone was now somewhere at the bottom of the ocean. I told myself that when I got back, I would talk to my parents no matter what. That evening, Mr. and Mrs. Winter dragged Marvin and me to a business dinner. Almost every rich couple had kids, dressed up, hair perfectly done, and way too well behaved for their age. Marvin, please behave, and don't make your adoptive parents look bad. Marvin looked at me with the tired gaze of an adult and just nodded, as if he'd accepted a long time ago that people always expect something from him. He sat beside me, silently picking at his food and acting like the perfect kid. Mr. and Mrs. Winter kept throwing him these appraising looks. At some point, the whole scene started to make me sick, but I kept smiling and pretending everything was fine. When dinner was over, we went back to our rooms and Marvin was sent straight to bed. I lingered in the hallway because I needed a moment to catch my breath, and that's when I accidentally overheard Mr. and Mrs. Winter talking around the corner without even trying to keep their voices down. Once the cruise is over, we should take Marvin back to the orphanage.
Agreed. We don't need a difficult, nasty kid like that. He ruins our image of a perfect family.
They said it so calmly, like they were talking about returning a defective purchase. In that moment, something inside me flipped. I quietly slipped away to my room and lay there all night, wide awake, remembering Marvin's words, thinking about my parents and Miss Bateman's offer, which now felt even more confusing. It all piled onto me at once, and in the early morning hours, I finally drifted off, simply because my body couldn't take it anymore. The next day, I woke up to a strange noise and a commotion on deck. When I went out to see what was going on, I spotted a Coast Guard boat cutting toward our ship. For a second, I thought there had been some kind of accident, but when the boat pulled alongside and people started coming up the gangway, I froze because I recognized my parents in the crowd. Mom and Dad rushed over to me, paying no attention to anyone else around us. They held me so tightly, like they were afraid I might disappear.
We were so worried. We realized you hadn't come home for the night. We contacted the family you were babysitting for and found out about the cruise.
Sweetheart, let's go back home. Right then, I realized that for all my resentment, I really did want to go back. When we got home, my parents sat me down and for the first time in a long while, really looked at me like they were actually seeing me.
We're sorry for everything, Pamela. We've been hiding something from you.
As it turned out, I wasn't born alone. I had a twin sister, Emily, and she died shortly after we were born. My parents decided to never tell me so they wouldn't traumatize me. Mom was so terrified of losing another child that after the triplets were born, she fixated on them completely and didn't realize how much she was drifting away from me. I cried and held them tight because for the first time in ages, everything finally made sense. And even the pain of that story felt more honest than all those years of silence.
We're so sorry, but from now on, things will be different because we love all of you the same.
The next day, I went to school and found Miss Bateman. I'm sorry, Miss Bateman, but I can't be your daughter. I'm staying with my parents.
I understand.
But you know, there's a boy named Marvin who needs a mother just as much as you need a child. She smiled in a way that made me realize this story wasn't over yet. Sometimes adults mess things up, not because they don't love you, but because they're scared. And sometimes we look for love anywhere we can just to avoid having an honest conversation with the people right next to us. How are things with your family?